Hey kids, it's Jack coming to you again here by video. Wanted to talk to you a little bit about my creative process and some of the changes that I've made, because this will affect how you receive content from me, how I'm going to be releasing new books, so forth. I mentioned this in my most recent video about the updates on the release of episode 13 of the Scions of Oth series. That, of course, is my main focus right now. We're working our way through season 2, which is going to ultimately be 9 episodes long. Just like season 1 was 9 episodes long, season 2 will be the same. In that video, I talked about how I kind of ran into some roadblocks with my creative process. I ran into some trouble, basically, because I was writing and then turning around and revising and then writing in the next book in a very compressed amount of time. And it was just too much switching back and forth. I was talking to some other authors that I have the pleasure to work with, authors from all different kinds of genres, actually. For those who don't know, I work for a company called BookFunnel. Most of you who are my newsletter subscribers probably know what BookFunnel is. I am the lead author support specialist for BookFunnel, and I also am the host of the BookFunnel podcast. That podcast is geared towards authors, might not be of interest to you as readers, but it's relevant here because in that podcast, and I'm hosting it, I get to talk to a whole bunch of authors who are successful in a lot of different ways and kind of get to pick their brains. So in the process of the last few months and some of the guests that we've had on that podcast, I've started to piece together some big things about myself and my own creative process by getting to talk to authors about what their creative process is, and among other things. So this one concept that really resonated with me first was this idea that some authors are a phoenix, if you will. Well, the mythological creature of a phoenix, of course, is a firebird that grows rapidly, eventually dies and in a burst of flame, leaving behind a pile of ashes, but then rises from those ashes again, right? Some variation of that, depending on where you're reading about it. But some authors are like that as well. You go through periods of time where you write and write and write very intensely, and then you don't write for a while. This has been my experience with myself too. I've gone long periods of time without writing. In fact, when I became a new dad, that was one of the periods in my life where I didn't write a whole lot. There were big gaps of time, but always coming back felt like I regained my sort of writing strength, if you will. My writing muscles were still there. I was like riding a bike, and I got back into it fairly quickly. 2024 was one of those years where I just dove into it. Problem was that I was trying to do everything all at once. So this idea of being a phoenix resonated with me, but it wasn't quite exactly how I felt my creative process works. To me, honestly, it feels more like seasons. I go through seasons of my life, and in certain seasons, I am primed to do certain things, whether that is to write or to focus on revising or what have you. Either way, I realized that the way I had been doing things wasn't working with myself creatively. I was trying to force myself to do something that I just wasn't capable of doing. And so I have made some major modifications to my creative process. Now, my plan is actually to do things in chunks. In the last few months, I have been outlining several books, an embarrassingly large number of books I have outlined in the past few months, and I am going to wrap up the outlining process within the next week or so, about the middle of March. After that process is wrapped up, I will then be transitioning to a writing season. I will take those books that I have outlined, which is plenty of books. In fact, more books than I may even be able to write this year. It's an ambitious number, an ambitious goal, but that gives me something to reach for. And I have all the outlining done. Previously, that had been one of the problems that I faced, is that I was on to writing the next thing, but I hadn't really outlined it yet. I had some ideas, maybe some notes, things like that, but I relied heavily on that outlining process. I am a planner. I'm not a pantser. I need to have those details in front of me. And especially for a series, it works a lot better when I know what I'm setting up, what I'm trying to foreshadow. This is something I haven't always been consistent about. And so actually taking the time to focus on outlining was great. I gained momentum on it too. As I continued to outline, the outlines became easier to write, and it became also kind of a fun way to sort of tell the story before I've actually told the story. Only to myself, of course. I haven't shared those outlines with anybody yet, but I digress. So I have those outlines waiting in the wings. And then in the middle of March, I will transition to writing those. I can write at a pretty decent pace, about 5,000 words a day if I'm just writing by hand. Typically, actually, write on my phone, which is weird. Not many authors do that. And I write on the treadmill, which is also weird. I'm like walking on the treadmill as I'm writing, just how my brain works. If I'm doing two things at once, I'm being really productive, right? But hey, it works for me. Actually, I do it at my local gym. And there's something about being in public that also helps me just eliminate all distractions. There's a bunch of other stuff going on around me, and that actually allows me to focus more on writing, believe it or not. Doing it here from the comfort of my own home would actually be more distracting because there's things around me that I have to do at all times. So that's worked for me. But I'm also going to be trying out something new. Dictation. Some of you are probably familiar with dictation. You probably use speech to text on your phone. That's essentially what I'm going to be doing. And this is what a lot of authors use to boost productivity, get more words in during their writing sessions, and also make their dialogue and so forth more believable. There's lots of benefits to it. And it's something I've been on the fence about. But I felt like now is the time to incorporate that into my writing process and give it a good old college try. So I'm diving into that as well. If it doesn't work out, it's no big deal. I've done a little bit of it in the past, but never really fully committed to it. So this time I'm going to actually give it a go and try to write a full book using dictation. One of the main things that was getting me caught up with this idea of dictation was the fact that the first draft is very messy. It's not very clean. However, there are some tools that I'm going to be using in order to clean up that first draft fairly quickly and easily. And so that might actually make the whole process simpler. If it works, it could possibly double my output of words per day, which would be great. However, I'll settle for even a marginal increase. Even if I don't double my words, it's no big deal. So I'm going to be writing for 5 to 6 months straight, producing as many words as I possibly can. And then I will have to hit the brakes sometime in August, probably, so that I have time to move into revisions. I've also been revising my revision process and actually getting it out on paper, what I am going to be doing, from getting feedback from my editors, getting feedback from you, my readers. That's a part of the process, and I'll talk about that here in a moment. And then incorporating that into my own revisions, where I then try to add more sensory details. That's one of the big things that I find I miss oftentimes. And then just some basic stuff like repetition of words and phrases and so forth. For the most part, because I plan my books, I don't usually have major plot surgery to do at this point in time at the second revision. I did with one of my first books, sent it to my editor, and he had me cut up and rearrange the entire plot of the book in order to make it work. And after that, I'm never doing that again. So I really focused on learning plot structure and focused on building that skill so that when it comes time to plot out my books, I don't run into that problem. This is also why I'm not a pantser. Have to have an outline of some kind, even if it's just some notes and scratches on a piece of paper. However, the outlines I have now are a bit more detailed, in some cases very detailed, with full character sheets and descriptions of different factions and groups and locations. I've also used some AI image generation to visualize some things about my world. I'm obviously not just, taking those things verbatim, but using it as a way to help inspire me and give me a reference when I need a visual reference. AI image generation is actually pretty good for that, I've found. And, it's an interesting and unique way to focus on building the world before I go in and write the world. So that's kind of where I'm at. Now, that revision process, like I said, is going to involve feedback, not just from my editors, but from you, my readers. And that's where you come in. As I'm writing all of these new books, I will be cleaning them up, doing a very light copy edit on them to make sure that there's no major glaring errors, typos, and so forth. a very clean first draft. And I'm going to be asking for some of you to become beta readers and give me your feedback on those books as I write them. So for most of 2025, I won't necessarily have a lot that I will be publishing. There'll be some new books in the Scions of Auth series that will be coming out. That's a separate video that will be coming up on the channel soon. That will be talking about what I'm going to be writing in 2025, which I'm really excited for. But a lot of this stuff is actually not going to be released until 2026. It's actually part of the whole plan. I spent the first couple months of the year outlining, then I'm going to spend the middle of the year writing, and then I'm going to finish the year by revising. And then I will publish the vast majority of those books that I write in 2026. That means that the books are already written by the time 2026 rolls around. They just need a book cover and some formatting, which isn't that hard. And I can set them for pre-order immediately once they're ready to go. At least that's the hope. We'll see how it goes. There's obviously going to be some hurdles and roadblocks along the way, and I'll have to make adjustments. And that's just how it goes. Totally fine. But that's my hope, at least, that I can have some books ready to go and have them up for pre-order by the time January 1st, 2026 rolls around. So that's where I need your help, again, as beta readers. For right now, not a whole lot that you need to do. I'll make additional announcements when I have stuff ready to go. Like I said, I haven't actually started the process of writing these books just yet. That will be the middle of March by the time I have some material ready to go. But the way I'm going to be producing this content, I will have material every week that I'll need some feedback on. New material that will be in a little bit of a raw state. Like I said, beta readers, think of it like you're in the beta for like a video game or something like that. It's not finished yet. There's probably some changes, but the vast majority, I'd say 75 to 85% of everything that's going to be there is there. And your feedback will maybe influence that. Maybe you'll have something to say that will actually steer me in a certain direction or give me some really good feedback on a character or an element of the plot that I overlooked. Look for that in upcoming newsletters. And obviously, I'll have some announcements of that here on the YouTube channel. I'm going to be releasing announcements like this on the YouTube channel more frequently here in 2025. It's another thing that I learned from another author from that podcast that I host. I want to connect with you guys better. It's something I've really failed at. My newsletter is a tool that I use to communicate with you guys, and I've used it in the past, and I feel like I've done a pretty good job in some ways, but I think I can do better. And I feel like YouTube, I feel like I can just talk to you directly. It just makes more sense. Some of you might like hearing me rant and ramble, and that's totally fine. Some of you might not, and you don't necessarily watch these videos, in which case I don't know why I'm talking to you because you're probably not watching this video right now. But nevertheless, this is what I'm going to do. So for those of you who appreciate it, thank you. Leaving a like on the video, subscribing always helps, of course. The YouTube channel is not something I expect to grow huge. It's more going to be a tool for me to communicate with you, give you updates on what's going on. I have done some live streams on the channel here in the past. That might be something I do again in the future. I have young children, so having a scheduled specific time where I'm live for 2 to 3 hours is tough. Guys, I don't know how well I'm going to be able to do something like that. I don't know. We'll see. I'll try to make something like that work here and there where I can, but it's probably not going to be like the way I did things in the past, where I was trying to stream multiple times, go through revisions and stuff like that. It's just unfortunately not in the cards right now, but I'll occasionally do some live streams too. So there you go. That is some updates for you on my creative process. I'll be coming to you again here in the near future with some details on what I'll be releasing in 2026 and writing in 2025. Look forward to that here on the channel. Until next time, guys, we'll see ya.